Do you want to know what the single biggest difference is between great communicators, people who are great public speakers, presenters, versus the average ones, the boring ones? It's not about intelligence. It's not about looks. It's not this nebulous thing people like to call charisma. It's not the absence of ums, uhs, ers, you knows. It's not even about even having a sense of humor, although humor helps. The single biggest difference between great speakers and presenters and everybody else, great communicators use stories to illustrate all their key points. When I ask people all over the globe, whether I'm training a financial executive or a prime minister, I get the same response. I ask them, what do you remember from the best speakers you've seen? Beyond the fact that someone was comfortable or engaging or walked around, the only thing anyone remembers? The stories. Now, they remember the messages associated with the stories, but they remember the stories. Now, you're probably thinking, well, that's great, TJ, but, I'm not a natural storyteller, and my industry, we don't have... It's all a bunch of excuses. It doesn't have to be anything particularly fancy. For example, a few years ago, I was conducting kind of a run-of-the-mill presentation training. A major healthcare executive, a CEO, had flown into New York City to work with me for a day. And we were in my training facility in Midtown Manhattan. And his staff had called me in advance, said, TJ, we've worked on this speech for 3 months. Whatever you do, don't change it. It's been approved by all the different people, the lawyers, investors, everyone signed off on it. Let's try not to change it. I said, hey, we're going to try to improve him the best we can in every way possible. So Jim gets there early in the morning. I started the presentation training as I do with all of them. I just had him get up and speak. I recorded it on video. So he gives his presentation. It's about 15 minutes long. I record it. We play it back. And he asked me what I think of it. And his speech consisted of him sort of head down, going through a whole bunch of bullet points, reading bullet points on a slide, and a totally normal presentation, no worse than any other presentation I've seen. But he's basically reading off of a script. He's reading off of bullet points on a screen. And he wants to know what I think. And I said, Jim, I'll tell you what I think, but I want to know what you think. And again, I made him really watch his own presentation. And when it was done, he turned to me and said, oh my God, teacher, it's so boring. I wouldn't want to watch me. What did you think? And I had to say, well, Jim, you seem like a smart fellow. If you think it's incredibly boring, guess what? It is. And we took his speech and we just tore it up into little pieces. We balled it up and we threw it in the trash can. So, okay, Jim, let's roll up our sleeves. Let's try again. We got a clean sheet of paper. We brainstormed on how many? That's right, just the top 5 ideas that we really wanted to convey to his audience for this presentation. And then he came up with a little story for each one, an example for each one, and he had a single sheet of paper. We got rid of the slides because they were worthless. And this time he just spoke, focused on a few ideas. We recorded it, looked at it. Then he didn't even ask me what I thought. He's like, oh my God, it's 1,000 times better. TJ, you're a genius. Well, I'm not a genius. I'm just getting people to stop boring their audiences to death. Okay, so what did I do there? I just told a little story. Happens to be a true story. There's nothing particularly glamorous or exciting about it. It wasn't in an exotic locale. It's just in my office in Midtown Manhattan. There wasn't any great drama. Nobody cried. Nobody pulled a gun on me. That has happened before. A simple story, but it had a character, had a problem, had a setting, had a little dialogue, had a challenge, it had some emotion involved, and it had a solution. That's all a story is. So if you really want to convey your main messages, you need to package each message with a story. And the story wasn't for me just to be entertaining. It was to convey a very important point, that you don't want to bore your audience. You don't want to just do this boring data dump. You want to have narrowed your message down to 5. But if I just said that in 10 seconds, it goes in one ear and out the other. By telling a story, and it only took a couple of minutes, it allows the audience to visualize it. That's the real power of story, is it forces the audience that you're speaking to, that you're presenting to essentially run a little movie reel along with what you're saying. That triggers the memory process. That's why story is so important. So it's not just about opening your speech with a story or a funny story to loosen people up. No. It's critical to the whole communication process. You need an actual, relevant story, a real story, not some generic motivational starfish story, but a real story about a real problem, a real conversation you had with a real person, a client, a colleague, a customer, a prospect, and how the problem was resolved. If you do that, you're instantly going to be one of the best speakers your audience has seen today, possibly ever. So I need you to start thinking about your stories you're going to use for your messages for the presentation you're going to be delivering.